What's going on, y'all? Site Perspectives, giofvcks, and I haven't done a video discussing this in a minute, so I want to talk about it real quick. Let's talk about it. Narcissistic abuse in the black household, black families, people of color families, people's families in general, but the reason I speak about it from a black person of color perspective is because I'm black, African American, and I grew up in a black household, black American household. So that's my perspective, and it needs to be discussed more because a lot of people think that, especially in the black community, that any type of mental health issue, personality disorder, a lot of people in our community are still under the notion that this isn't real, this doesn't exist, you need to just pray about it, go to church. You know, a lot of times going to therapy and counseling is discouraged, it looked down upon, you're seen as weak and pathetic for seeking help for your mental health, for relationship issues. And a lot of these issues, when you look at the black community, a lot of these issues that we have are deeply rooted in people having severe mental health issues and mental health problems that go undiagnosed. And I mean, really, it can be argued that a large portion of the black community is mentally ill. And I'm just going to be honest. And really, it can be argued that the large portion of humans, regardless of race, are mentally ill. But again, when you live in a society that places money over people and people's lives, you really can't be surprised that we have all of these issues, in my opinion. But let's talk about it. So I moved away a year ago. I come back frequently because I still look after and look out and help and assist with my family, on top of the fact that my job, I get to go in office twice a week, and in office is in the hometown. So I go twice a week, so I'm there at least twice a week. I moved away a year ago in July of 2020 during the pandemic, and we still are in a global pandemic. But I'm saying all this to paint a picture. Since I've moved and relocated and I've been away from the toxicity, I'm no longer living in the toxicity. I'm no longer in close, proximity to toxic people, and I'm not constantly being bombarded with their bullshit. It really, 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 really hits you why you need to have boundaries and why you need to establish them today. If you don't have them, please consider establishing them today. As soon as you can get the opportunity to establish boundaries, please do. Information on how you can set up healthy boundaries will be in the description box below. Because loving a person from a distance is probably the best piece of advice I have received, throughout my self-care journey and healing process. Because you cannot, in my opinion, you cannot heal where you were broken. And this is why so many of us never heal, because it's basically a constant cycle of trauma. It is constant trauma and abuse everywhere you go. And then you wonder why this situation might have happened to you when you were 8, but at 28, you're just now getting the chances to heal. I'm using myself as an example, if you haven't noticed. You know me, full transparency. I am a survivor of child molestation. I was 8 years old, and I was molested by a next door neighbor and a family friend for an entire year in third grade when I was 8. So this is 2001. So we're talking 20 years ago. We're talking 2 decades ago. And I'm just now in the process of really healing from that, because I didn't get into therapy until 2019. May 2019 is when I started going to therapy and taking it seriously. I've had therapists before, but I wasn't like really engaged in it. So it wasn't effective. And which brings me to my next point. Therapy is a process. It's not like the medications where, you know, people are so quick to take a pill and think that's going to solve everything. And don't get me wrong, some of us need to be on medications. Some of us really do have, especially when we look at mental health, have chemical imbalances that you need medication for that. That is very true. But I'm just here to say therapy is not, you can't use a pill concept with therapy, because you can't go to one therapist session and then think you're going to just somehow be okay. This is ongoing for a lot of us. That's why we're always saying healing is not overnight, and it's not linear, and it takes time, and it also takes accountability. You also have to be engaged, because, you know, and my thing is, what's the point of paying all this money to go to these therapist sessions if you're not going to be engaged? That's just my, you know, 2 cents on it. But anyways, since being away, and I it's sad that we have to put disclaimers, because, you know, people are so dense, and like purposely don't look at the whole picture and then come speaking out the side of their neck. So you have to put disclaimers on everything. So disclaimer: I love my grandmother. I love my mother. I love my uncle. I loved my grandfather. I miss my grandfather. You know, I love my family. I'm not saying, when I talk about these incidences, because especially in the Black community, there's this viewpoint that what goes on in the house stays in the house. And that type of mentality is why abuse is allowed to flourish in our communities. Because what ends up happening is you're basically told snitching get stitches. Because that's the same mentality. You're not supposed to talk about the trauma, the abuse, the neglect, the hate, the anger that you are constantly enduring at home, behind closed doors, with family, with people that's supposed to be caring about you. You're not supposed to say anything about this. But yet, and then again, you're teaching your children how to be liars. Let's really be honest. When you're telling your kids this type of stuff, oh, don't tell nobody what's going on here. What goes on here stays here. This ain't nobody business. You know, don't air out the dirty laundry, aka lie about what's going on here. Put on this show and this facade that everybody is happy and we're just this happy, loving family. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, people getting yelled at, people getting beat, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, financial abuse, all kinds of chaotic messes going on behind closed doors. But when we get out here in the public, let's look like, even though this is super problematic for various reasons, but I'm just gonna disclaimer, trigger warning, but let's just say we're crazy behind closed doors, but out front we look like the Cosby family. Again, problematic, I know, but that's how a lot of people in the Black community, especially in the Black middle class, this is how a lot of Black middle class people are. You know, they think because they have money and they have assets and they have wealth, somehow that negates all of the mental and physical and sexual abuse and trauma that's going on behind closed doors in these Black middle class households. And that's why I always say, yeah, financially, we have always been pretty much well off and taken care of. And that's a privilege. That's a blessing. I don't take it for granted. Okay? However, this is why I'm always saying, yeah, money can assist people, but it does not buy happiness. And just because you're financially supporting your children doesn't mean you're a good parent. Okay? A lot of y'all have this viewpoint. And like I said, a lot of us, I wish more people in the Black middle class, who grew up in Black middle class households, would be more honest, you know, and transparent. Now, I'm not saying that all of our families are abusive and narcissistic and toxic and dysfunctional. I'm not saying that. However, it's kind of obvious that there's a nice amount of people, a nice population size where this is the case. Otherwise, we wouldn't be constantly talking about how effed up the Black household is, and the Black community is, and the Black family is, okay? After a while, you gotta stop trying to gaslight people and telling people that their lived experiences aren't real just because you didn't experience it, okay? Information on gaslighting will be in the description box below. But this is gonna be a longer video, or definitely have some parts to it. So, what I've noticed for me personally, Mercy, stop digging up holes. What I've noticed for me personally is I don't live here anymore. I'm not living in the household, so I'm not constantly being bombarded with, being belittled, name called, talked to any old way, being called everything but a child of God by a person that's supposed to love you and care about you. Again, when you are growing up in these households, what are you teaching your kids? You're teaching your children that abuse is love. You're teaching your children that love is pain and love is violent. You're also teaching your children to put up with people that are two-faced and fake. Because you think about that. The person that loves and cares about you is also the same person that's calling you names, making fun of you, disrespecting you, yelling at you, cussing you out, saying hurtful things to you and about you, spreading gossip and misinformation about you to other family members. So you get up here as an adult and you're out here living your life and you start noticing your so-called friendships, your so-called romantic relationships, your platonic relationships, they all reflect what you grew up with. So you start noticing the people that you've been calling friends are also two-faced, fake, phony. Got one persona when they with you and another persona when they around other people. Talking trash about you, always gossiping, always, I got to give you the tea on what's going on with everybody. You start noticing, like I said, you just start noticing the fakeness of it all, right? So what happened to me, and what's happened to me more and more, is when I come home to help assist with family, I'm just realizing as time goes on, my grandmother gets worse and worse and worse with it, okay? My mom moves back in with her December 2020. Mind you, my mom moved out, June of 2017. So she was gone for basically 3.5 years. And even with people being gone, and that's the problem with narcissistic, toxic, dysfunctional people, they have trained everybody, and it's been so instilled into a lot of us to family first. That's your granny, that's your mama, that's your daddy, that's your papa, that's your brother, that's your sister, that's your sibling, those your grandparents, those your parents, that's family. How can you blah, blah, blah. So it's been instilled in a lot of us to stick around and put up with abuse. But then in the same breath, they want to sit up and tell you wouldn't, and that's just it. That's why I always say, if it wasn't a family member, you wouldn't be putting up with this shit. You wouldn't be putting up with somebody that's cussing you out, name calling, belittling you, lying and spreading gossip and shit about you to everybody in the family. You wouldn't be putting up with people like this if they weren't your family members. And again, a narcissistic, toxic, dysfunctional people, they know that. It's all manipulation. And they're using that to keep you in this abusive hold, right? Because they don't want you to ever really break free and get away from them, because that's just it. The more and more time you are away from them, the more and more time it's almost like your brain is finally getting fresh oxygen and you're able to realize you don't want to be around them. And that's why I be telling people, once you get away from toxic people and you get a breath of fresh air, you're going to realize, I don't want to be with you. I don't want to be with you. I don't want to be around you. Again, people shouldn't be having panic attacks the minute they get a phone call from you, okay? Or the minute they see your name pop up on a text message, you sitting up here hyperventilating and sweating because you already know who is sending the message, who's calling. Every time I come here, in some form or fashion, I know I'm going to be upset. Something's going to be said. And, my grandmother is 76 and a half, still sitting up here trying to tell people how they should dress. Mind you, I'm 28, almost 29. My mom just turned 51. My uncle is 45, about to be 46. So, again, nobody here is a child. Nobody here is a kid. People are full-grown adults with their own lives and responsibilities. I mean, real adults, okay? And you still sitting up here criticizing and making commentary well, what you should wear this and you should do this and y'all could dress better and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you're not going to be telling adults what they can and cannot wear. And that's what I mean by with these toxic, dysfunctional, narcissistic, overly controlling ass people. And I'm going to say it. You don't want a matriarch or a patriarch. They're both abusive. That's the damn problem. Should no one gender be telling the other gender what to do every damn day and controlling and abusive? No, you don't want either of that. Okay? So what I've noticed with my grandmother and mother, and I'm probably going to make a smaller video to kind of highlight this again, but what I've noticed is the jealousy. And I'm going to call it the narcissistic mother and daughter relationship, and the jealousy and the animosity that the mother has for her daughter. And I'm just going to go in and say it, especially to people who are able to give birth, you know, whether you're a cis woman, a trans man, trans masculine, you have ovaries, a vagina, you were assigned female at birth, you're intersex. This is why I say it this way, because there's a lot of people that can potentially give birth. But I'm going to say this. Stop having kids with people that you don't like, you don't want, because what ends up happening is y'all will have these kids and y'all end up having all of this resentment, animosity towards the child that you really should have for yourself and for the person that you decided to lay up with. Because that's the problem. Y'all don't like these kids. You don't even want these kids. And a lot of you cis het folks be the main ones out here procreating, creating bastards, because that's what it is. Because let's be honest, most of us, you didn't want us. We don't have any inheritance to our father, don't even have our father's last name. Father don't even know the child is here. And then too, on the flip side, cis men are never held accountable for all of these unwanted ass kids that they help create. But you know, let's get back to it. The animosity and the jealousy that narcissistic parents have for their kids, man. Like, my grandmother is jealous of my mother. She's jealous of the relationships my mother has. She's jealous of the relationship that me and my mother have together, despite everything that I've gone through, that she's gone through, that we've went through. My grandmother is jealous of the fact that me and my mom are able to still talk to each other, spend time with each other, laugh and have fun. She's jealous of that. And you will notice toxic people, they are jealous of any resemblance of a healthy functioning relationship. You know, and I know, and my mom highlights it, we all highlight it. Anytime we're about to get ready to go somewhere and it's just me and my mom and we're clearly about to leave, we're about to have fun, guess who's having a damn pity party and trying to rain on everybody's parade? Granny. And this is what toxic narcissistic people do. You know, how dare, because you got to remember, the attention has to be on them at all times, right? Everything has to be about them. Everything, they have to be the center of attention. So if you aren't giving them that attention, or somebody else is making you laugh and you're happy, they can't stand that shit, because they're supposed to be controlling your laughter, your happiness, your joy, your anger, your pain. Again, they have to control your entire emotional range in your life. How dare somebody else also be able to add to that, right? Because again, everything's about them. She gets to name calling my mom out of her name. And again, this is not new. I'm 28. I've grew up my entire life looking at my granny, you know, pretty much undercut my mom. And let's be honest, it can be argued. You really want to know why our relationship was so strained for years? It's because of her. And you start noticing, and this is why I'm going to say this, and this is for every child, as you get older, you will find out who the real deadbeat parent is. And you will find out who the real problematic person in your life was. Because I be trying to tell people, you don't have to really shade or sham the absentee parent, because it's going to become very apparent to that child as they get older. Because it took me a long time, but I'm here to let you know. I now look at my granny in a very different lens, because it's like, you're pretty much why the family's dysfunctional. And don't get me wrong, Papa has a lot of responsibility in this as well. But that's just it. Papa been dead for 6 years. We've just been dealing with you for 6 years. And you would think if he was the sole problem, shouldn't we have moved on or gotten better and started healing? And, 6 years later, no. You know why? Because you're the problem too. You add the same amount of dysfunction, toxicity, and abuse as he did. Y'all basically are tit for tat. Okay? It's just the only difference is one was more physically, the other one is more mentally. Either way it goes, it's abuse. And it shouldn't be taking place. And you shouldn't be treating people that you claim to love and care about like this. And this is exactly why, especially in the Black community, our view of what love is so tainted and dysfunctional and toxic. Like, why would you want to, I love you, but I'm mentally abusing you. I love you, but I'm physically abusing you. Why would you want any of that? And that's how it is in a lot of our families and communities. And we just need to keep it real. Now, are there people that are living healthy, loving, caring, functioning relationships? Are there people who aren't being disrespected and belittled and name called and put down, and people spreading gossip about them, and then that's just it. And this is how we need to really look at gossip different too. All right, because now that I'm understanding shit, we need to look at gossip like what it is. It's a smear campaign. That's all it is. You're sitting up here purposely disrespecting a person's reputation and image, spreading misinformation or private information that was only supposed to be between you and that person, but somehow the whole damn family, if it's in a family dynamic, knows about it. Or if you're dealing with toxic, narcissistic, emotionally unavailable, manipulative ass friends, because you're a product of your environment and you tend to repeat the same cycles. So your friends reflect the dysfunctional ass shit that you went through with your family, and your friends are the same way. It's a smear campaign. I mean, damn, really sit down and think about it. What kind of life do you have where the whole premise of your life is talking shit about other people and then spreading gossip, aka smear campaign, misinformation, and trying to destroy that person's character and image? What is that? What y'all get together and get so excited to talk shit? Y'all don't see how that's dysfunctional and toxic? So this is about to be 23 minutes, so I'm about to make another video where I talk about a smaller piece of the mother and daughter dynamics when it comes to these narcissistic, toxic, dysfunctional ass families. I mean, this is the narcissistic family system. The mother is 9 times out of 10 jealous of the daughter. The father is jealous of the son or their kids. You'd be surprised. It's really twisted. And it just highlights, again, we really, especially in the Black and brown, people of color communities, and people in general, humans in general, we really need to highlight mental health. Because if a person is not mentally well, they're not going to be a good person to be around. And they damn sure have no business having kids and starting families.